Hi, Ted and Aspen. First, I wanted to start off by thanking you for such a fantastic Chicago Ideas Week. Um, I thought it was pretty agile how you planned around the founders' time, and the schedule kept changing, but we ended up by hearing from so many different voices, both entrepreneurs and creators in Chicago Ideas Week. I thought it was a nice way to finish Globe and to cap off our study trips. Previously, we'd heard from more traditional managerial thinkers in the EU regulation in Belgium, as well as from managers at Indonesian enterprises. So it was refreshing, and especially after this class on the entrepreneurial process, to hear from successful entrepreneurs. So without further ado, today I'm going to discuss how, or what is specifically distinct about the entrepreneurial process from conventional managerial thinking, and then I'll identify how entrepreneurship has altered my point of view of business and my approach towards problem solving. Um, so I'll start off with Sarasvathi's definition um, of effectual reasoning, and how in effectual reasoning, she says, is something that differs in entrepreneurs who use it instead of causal reasoning, or use it in conjunction with causal reasoning, which is basically testing outcomes you determine in advance for their solution. Effectual reasoning, on the other hand, is based on logic and serendipity. So it's to the extent that we can't control the future, we don't need to predict it. So you start with the means, and you allow solutions and learnings and your course of action to emerge based on your interactions with people, your readings, and your interactions with the customer. So effectual reasoning is basically what's employed and advocated to in the lean startup approach that we learned, and that was outlined in the HBR Lean Startup article, as well as the book itself. And basically it advocates launching products that customers actually want by constant experimentation, valuing customer feedback over intuition and protection of your IP, and designing products iteratively to require designing product iteratively while minimizing affordable loss being your expenditure of capital and people resources to arrive at a product launch. This approach differs from traditional managerial thinkers in that you learn from your customers and you're willing to adapt, rather than paying attention to all these artificial limitations that conventional thinkers and managers suffer from. These artificial limitations include willingness to only serve your existing customer segments, unwillingness to develop new products that, although they might tie together your core competencies quite well, they differ from your business model, or being unwilling to budge on price, for example, even in the presence of new competitors. So in the short run, these artificial limitations might help your business, or your business might exist, but in the long run, they'll won't allow you to adapt your business model to grow. One example of this customer-focused entrepreneurial approach and effectual reasoning, I thought, was demonstrated by Brad Keywell, one of the co-founders of Groupon, and his founding of Uptake, which we visited. And Uptake is basically a predictive analytics SaaS platform for industries with very expensive machinery. So in developing his business model, Brad spoke with customers, and he did keep in product itself, but he was constantly interacting with customers. He's not even an engineer. He just learned from the right people about what the problems in the industry were, and developed a whole new business model and solution that allowed him to do big data analytics in a way that no one had done it before, through something called edge computing, which is putting computers on the actual equipment and only streaming back insights rather than all this unnecessary data. Through this process of listening to his customers and iterating and designing product that is useful, they've already gained many customers, and now uptake is valued at over $1 billion. As the Bold book points out, and by Peter Diamandis points out, that a lot of the information has been democratized, and a lot of the resources now allow you to avoid hard infrastructure costs that entrepreneurs and businesses had to in the past. These include things such as AWS and GitHub that allow you to launch product cheaply and quickly. So now it's a lot easier to truly be agile, which is developing your product incrementally rather than on year-long planning cycles. One example of this lean startup methodology was shown in our Airbnb HBR reading or case study, which showed that throughout the process of getting funding and launching their business, Airbnb changed their business model several times to actually go from air mattresses to the ability to rent bedrooms and homes. At the same time, they were able to do guerrilla projects such as devoting resources to growth hacks such as capitalizing on events such as the DNC, or even raising funds through selling boxes of cereal. They leveraged their network in refining their business model and took the advice of Paul Graham to go on a customer discovery trip to NYC that led them to discover problems with their platform that they wouldn't have found on their own. These problems were poor photos that customers couldn't make a decision based off of, as well as poor descriptions and poor reviews. So having learned these things, they were able to return to their desk and develop features that that had the right incentives for the customers and hosts to act in the way that they wanted them to. And again, the entrepreneurial process and the lean startup methodology favors customer feedback ahead of keeping things secret and maintaining an IP advantage. One example I found of product iteration triumphing over these cadence unveilings of products that's very engineer determined was a platform I use called Pinboard, and the founder of Pinboard created Pinboard very quickly after a similar service called Delicious changed their product so dramatically that it disoriented and disgusted users. He was able to capture a big share of the market and actually ended up acquiring Delicious at a later date. This class came at a great time in my life because it's altered my view of how businesses are started, and it's changed my approach towards problem solving and personal growth. I've been networking for ages, and the approach that's taught in the business school is often pretty rote. It's contact all these consultants and get your name on the list so they'll refer you. But I've been able to grow my network partially due to the lessons I've learned in this class because I address what I know and what I don't know, and with what I don't know, I try to ask questions to people who do. So I've been able to speak with many founders over Twitter or at blockchain events and get the answers that put me on the right learning path or that eventually might lead to an opportunity. To reference the article on freeing yourself from conventional thinking, the author there found that a University of Michigan study showed that people often were willing to relinquish their deep-seated beliefs even when contradictory evidence was provided. I found that even at a large innovative organization like Amazon that there was still a good amount of politics and people unwilling to change if their name was attached to something, and a culture where you have you're afraid to fail. And so with that, I've determined that I want to enter a more smaller organization where I can have a bigger impact after graduating. Moving forward, I've learned that attitude is everything, and this is something that Peter Jimyan talked about again. The attitude and passion. Without the right passion, it's gonna be hard to put in a lot of hours into something and convince others that to join you doing so. In the talk by the Spring CM CEO, Greg Buchholz, he talks a lot about work-life balance and having principles that you can fall back on and relying when tackling problems, both work-related or personal life-related. These helped him kind of get through while he was, a lot of people were questioning him and he was running out of money. And as Bold also brings up, it's the day before something is truly a breakthrough, it's a crazy idea. So the day before he was successful, or it was clear his success was imminent, people are still questioning him on why did you leave Goldman and etc. From Eric Severnhouse, I also learned that the attitude you have towards your employees is so important, and treating them like you yourself would want to be treated as an entrepreneur is the key to retention. And he does that by entertaining them, by constantly giving them opportunities to learn and impact the business in new ways. And so to kick off my journey, the Bold book in this class, you've emphasized a lot that you just got to start somewhere. You got to find a problem you see in the world, learn more about it, and start working on it. I've done this through keeping my GitHub updated, constantly learning about new coding practices, etc. But eventually, I hope to translate that one day, once into tackling a problem, whether that be in blockchain or another form of technology or not technology related at all. Whatever I do, being purpose driven is gonna make that process a lot easier and more inspired. Being able to reference models like the 5M model is going to help me break down the components of the business model, I'm getting money from, who my market is, into manageable problems that I'll have to answer.